Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bold Take Podcast. I'm Austin Hill. With me, as always, is Austin Waiter. And today we're back talking college football action. And we had another stunning week of college football that sets up some interesting decisions that are going to have to be made in just a couple weeks. But even more importantly, it sets up some interesting scenarios in our conference championships. Some teams have clinched, some conferences. We have like 8 teams left that can possibly clinch. And don't worry, we'll be talking about them. Every
Yep.
single one of them. Uh,
Yeah.
but look, it was a great weekend. And just to start us off here, look, this is the third time this season that 7 top 25 teams have lost in 1 week. Um, College football has been on steroids this year. And I think that's because of the 12-team playoff. People feel alive. They feel like they can make something happen. And we're seeing that with some of these teams. Let's talk about a team just real quick before we really get into it all. In South Carolina, who I would have thought 3 weeks ago was dead in the water, had a good season looking forward to next year. And now, with the way things have shaken out in college football, especially in the SEC, they could realistically find their way back into the college football playoff.
Yeah. Well, I'll just go ahead and say just for all college stuff in college football in general this weekend, you think back to the 14 playoff era and you look at it, this week would have had very minor impact on it, at least in my opinion. This would have had a very minor impact on the top four. You might only have like one or two contenders for that top four spot go down. Now you see with the 12-team playoff, these upsets happening all the way down into the 19 and 20s all had a major impact on the playoff. And again, one of the major reasons why the 12-team playoff was a phenomenal idea because it makes every game important. And I want to give credit to Booger McFarland. He came out personally on Twitter and was like, listen, I was against the 12-team playoff saying it wouldn't make all the games matter. I would like to apologize for that. So I have he has my respect than some of the other clowns at ESPN who all of a sudden are like, yeah, I remember when people said it wasn't going to be good. I'm like, yeah, that was you guys that said it wasn't going to be good. But yeah, South Carolina, you thought they were dead in the water. Now they have a great opportunity in a game similar to what we're talking about with Clemson this weekend. For both those teams, last year this game wouldn't have mattered as much. Now there are incredible stakes on the line with their game on Saturday.
Yeah, a real chance to prove yourself, um, and give yourself a shot to make magic happen. But let's start getting into some of these games this week, and let's start with Notre Dame stomping Army 49-14. And look, again, we talk about it. The Irish, to me, have really found their footing as of late. Since the Northern Illinois loss, they've basically decided to leave absolutely no questions about who the better team is game in and game out. When they leave the field, they want people to know they're the better team. They do it by 30 plus every week. Right now, this is an offense and just a team in general that's on an unbelievable roll right now, heading into their final game before a potential college football playoff game.
Yeah, look, they are well, at least in my opinion, they're pretty much already locked in. At least in my opinion, and the seeding and stuff could possibly change. I think depending on also what happens this weekend and next week with conference championships. I think they're in already, so this is good for them. Like you said, they've been dominating the teams they're playing. USC is going to be an interesting one. It's at USC. It'll be an interesting one to say the least. I think Notre Dame should be able to win it and handle business, but it should be an interesting matchup there. But yeah, they're already as good as in the playoffs, and it seems like they found their philosophy, which is run first, pass second. If they can have consistent success with that, all the great defense that they can have some success in the playoff.
Yeah, I'm with you there, absolutely, wholeheartedly. Um, but let's talk about Florida and Ole Miss, who look. This was a game that I want to give a shout out to Jaden Lazuski. a listener of ours, good friend of ours. He sends me a message before the game start on Saturday that says, "Hey, what are your big upset picks for today? Do you have anybody going down?" And I said, well, my two big ones are, I'd say Colorado, Kansas. Kansas, for the same reasons I said on the show, I thought Kansas was going to be the kind of team that, look how well they're playing right now. They're a team that I thought was going to win the Big 12. They're a team that I thought was going to go to the college football playoff this year. And that's not going to happen. But they're finally playing up to that potential of what this team was supposed to be. I thought they could come through, especially in a home game on senior night, come through and make something happen. And that is exactly what happened in a game we'll talk about in just a second. And then I said also maybe Penn State, Minnesota. I could see Minnesota making something happen there. He messaged me back and said, I like Florida over Ole Miss today. And I said, okay. I said, I like that pick. I don't hate it. Florida coming off a win. I was like, my big thing is, can Florida's defense contain this exciting and electric Ole Miss offense? I was like, I don't really know that the defense can do it. I think Lagway can give them some problems, but at the end of the day, I thought Ole Miss was going to pull away with it. But I want to give props to him right here, right now, because Florida came out, they held the defense strong, won this game, and they made Jackson Dart make some huge mistakes at the end of this game. And really, to me, that's the difference in this game is Jackson Dart's decision making. He just was not the Jackson Dart we've seen the last few weeks. And look, like Ole Miss said, like Jackson Dart said when they got that second loss, hey, we can't make any mistakes now. We got to be perfect. And unfortunately, luck has run out for Ole Miss, and a college football playoff berth is looking extremely unlikely.
Yeah, that's what you think, but obviously we'll get more to it in a little bit. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, looking at this game, Florida was really competitive. Like I said, their defense was really impressive throughout most of the game. But yeah, I'm with you. Jackson Dart just made some just horrible, horrible decisions in this game. I don't know what was going through his mind. The Florida defense made him just make some really bad choices throughout most of the game, specifically in those final 5 minutes of the game. I think he threw 7 interceptions and only two of them counted. At least that's what it felt like during if when you were
Yeah,
watching it. Um, but no, I'm just happy again for Florida. I'm happy for Billy Napier again, a guy who people left out for dead after the loss to Miami in week one. Everyone was kind of like, okay, it's inevitable. When's he getting fired? And now he comes down and gets two really impressive wins back to back to get this team to bowl eligibility, which I don't think many people thought they were going to get this year. So, yeah, I'm happy for them. And Ole Miss, look, this was your best chance in the Lane Kiffin era thus far to be a playoff team. I mean, switched to, you got 8 spots opened up more. This was your best chance, and you have gone and blown it in 2 games or in 3 games. The one you lost to an LSU team who we've seen has had issues. You lost to a Kentucky team that we have seen is not a good football team. Now you lose to a 6-5 Florida team. Yeah, it's just disappointing for Ole Miss, I'm sure, for their standards that they expected coming into the year. But I'm happy for Billy Napier and the Florida Gators.
absolutely. Fun turnaround we're seeing right now with Florida. Um, Then we've got Indiana falling short in their first big test of the season as the Buckeyes win 38-15. And look, let's just be honest. What really got Indiana out of this? Special teams mistakes allowed the Buckeyes to get good field position, put up quick points, and from there the momentum was on. And props to this Buckeyes team. They never took their foot off the gas.
Yeah, and you just look at the setup again. There's like 2 minutes left in the first half. It's 7-7. Indiana's about to punt back to Ohio State. Based on the way the defenses have played, you'd think it'd probably be 7-7 going into half, which if you're Indiana, you like where you're at. You talk about the muffed punt with the guy dropping the ball whenever he's getting ready to punt it. And then Ohio State scored a touchdown. Then you got Indiana punting to Ohio State in the second half. They returned the punt for the touchdown. I mean, next thing you know, it's all of a sudden it's 28-7 or 21-7 before you can even blink. I mean, you don't even know what just happened there. So, um, yeah, just a rough second, really special teams for Indiana. Um, and really, just besides that first drive, their offense really couldn't do anything either. Jim Knowles, credit him again. I've talked about him since he came over from Oklahoma State a couple of years ago. I knew he was going to be able to do good things with this Ohio State defense. They shut down Curtis Rourke. He wasn't even close to a key piece in the game. The run game for Indiana was good in the very start. After it was nothing. And, this begs the question for people. What is Indiana capable of doing whenever they play teams in the playoff? It's the one we're all going to wonder. It's what we're all going to talk about. But the good thing for Indiana, with them being ranked fifth, like we talked about, seven or six other top 25 teams went down this weekend. So there is plenty, plenty of stuff that helped Indiana out that could see them in the playoff if they can beat Purdue this weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Then we've got the Jayhawks staying hot, beating down the Buffaloes 37-21. And look, this game was Kansas's from the first snap. Devin Neal had his way in this game. And look, Deion Sanders, I think, made some great points in this post game talk with the team that they got full with success. They didn't even think about the possibility of losing. But that doesn't just apply to the players. This applies to Deion Sanders himself. I think it's so just crazy that he would be the guy to say this because I don't know if you saw, I don't know how much of this game you were watching. I was watching this whole game. The interview that he did between the first and second quarter, the run game had already amassed like 70 yards after the first quarter. And they asked Deion Sanders if they didn't expect this kind of rushing attack from Kansas. And he was like, "No, we expected it. We practiced it all week. We're going to come out and stop it. They got lucky this first quarter." What? And then Devin Neal proceeds to go out and rush for 207 yards,
Yeah.
three touchdowns.
Listen, yeah. I mean, it was 17-0 before any of us could even blink on this game. It was 17-0 Kansas. Um, and if anyone's like, wow, I can't believe Kansas won that game, it's like, where have you been the last 2 weeks? Where have you been? But no, they just straight up dominated from the get-go. Colorado came close to making it interesting right before the end of the first half and into the early points of the third quarter. But after that touchdown to make it a 2-point game, they just handled business from there. They took control of the game. You talked about Devin Neal was incredible. And yeah, I'm happy for Kansas. They got the win. Now they just got to beat Baylor on the road. And this team, somehow, after a 1-5 start, has a chance to go to a bowl game. I mean, I know it's a disappointing year, but the fact that they have a chance to go to a bowl game after that start that they had to the season is absolutely incredible for them. And for Colorado, look, the loss hurts. You still have an outside chance at making the conference championship game. You need a lot of things to happen this weekend. But as we're going to talk about, the Big 12 still has a million teams still available for that conference championship.
Yeah. Then you've got the Sun Devils. They move one step closer to a Big 12 championship berth with a 28-23 win over BYU. And like we said, their Big 12 championship destiny was in their hands. Win against BYU, win this week, and you're in. You have nothing left to talk about. You have done everything you can, and you are in. So great job by Arizona State here, taking matters, again, into their own hands, winning the game, and putting themselves in line to go to the Big 12 championship game. And for BYU, look, again, we talked about it last week. This team was getting closer and closer to getting beat week by week. And now it just feels like they've run out of steam.
Yeah.
Still a chance to make this Big 12 championship, but they've got to get back on track and they've got to get a win this week.
Yeah, good thing for BYU is they get Houston, so hopefully you think they can go and take care of business. But as far as this game is concerned, similar to the Kansas State or similar to the Kansas Colorado game, I mean, courtesy of Cam Scadaboo, Arizona State went up 21-0 like that. I mean, they were in full control early, and then BYU just slowly kept on climbing back into it. Made a 5-point game at one point. There's a part of me that wondered, is Arizona State about to have one of the bigger chokes of the season and BYU clinches a playoff spot and we aren't going to have this chaos? but then Arizona State defense stood up, made the interception, and when you thought the game was over, which courtesy to some interesting decision making by Coach Dillingham at the goal line for Arizona State in the final minute of the game. I don't know why he didn't just try to score a touchdown or just run the football straight at BYU. I don't know why, but nonetheless, it resulted in one of the strangest things ever, which was ironically the second one of two that happened on Saturday with fans prematurely rushing the field. And then that taking about 15 minutes to get them off. And then the BYU Hail Mary happening at the end. I mean, well, it was an incredible game, incredible environment for that game, I will say, just in general, too. So, yeah, I loved it. It hurt for BYU. I know, but like I said with them, there's still a million options available. Arizona State, it's very simple for them. They win against Arizona, a team that was picked near the bottom, second to last in the Big 12, will play for a trip to the college football playoff. It's incredible.
Yeah, really unbelievable. Then we've got Auburn stunning Texas A&M 43-41 in quadruple overtime. I mean, Auburn came out right away, gun slinging. Peyton Thorne decided to have maybe the best game of his life to open this game up. And then A&M creeps back, and it kind of felt like here it is. A&M's going to come back and close the game out, but they could never do it. They can never get any kind of a lead here at the end of the game. And Auburn gets the job done, makes a big stand on that 2-point conversion, and wins this game. And again, sends the college football playoff committee into pandemonium.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a trend with these upsets or just the wins we didn't expect, where teams coming out and winning, getting off to a really strong start in all of them. But A&M responded. I mean, they got up by 3 with 4 minutes left, and then Auburn got a chance and nearly screwed it up with some of the worst clock management I have seen in a while in college football. And that's saying something because I've seen bad clock management week in and week out. Lincoln Riley is a main example of that at USC, but that's a totally different thing. But nonetheless, they got to overtime. It was a great game that went back and forth in overtime, field goals, and then the 2-point conversion off, and then just a chance to tie it up your A&M. You run the great trick play to Marcel Reed, and the wide receiver's right there in the end zone, and he just drops it. It's absolutely brutal for A&M. But like I said, the good news for A&M this weekend, it's still all in front of you. You win this weekend, you're playing for the SEC championship. So it may drop you in the rankings, but we talked about it. The 5 highest conference champions are going to get in. And if A&M beats Texas and then beats Georgia, they're going to be in. That they're going to be fine. Which
Yeah.
I know it's weird with a 3-loss team. I can't believe a 3-loss team's going to get in. But if they beat Texas and Georgia back to back, you can't tell me they don't deserve to get in. And then for Auburn, this has been a rough year for them, so this is just something for them to look forward to. I think it's safe to say. Um, and now they got to play for bowl eligibility in the Iron Bowl, so I'm sure nothing chaotic will happen in that game.
Yeah. Then we've got the Sooners. They boom the Tide 24-3. The first time the Tide have had a game since what 2011 that they haven't scored a touchdown, I think was the stat. So really an impressive performance. This is what you expect from a Brent Venables coach team, though. Solid defense. For them to come out, hold this team to 3 points, man, it just shows how talented this team can be. Look, fortunate for them, Jackson Arnold got plenty of time left in his college football career. This is really only the beginning for Oklahoma in the SEC. But a big win over Alabama knocks them out of the college football playoff picture right now. And man, this was a big, shocking one that finally has set the table for a couple ACC teams to get into this top 25 or this top 12.
I mean, listen, the Oklahoma offense still has a long way to go, but like we talked about with the team, when Brent Venables led defense can win you some games, is what we're talking about. And really, it shows a common flaw in Alabama all year. You live by Jalen Milroe, you die by Jalen Milroe. And that is what happened on Saturday night. Jalen Milroe did not play well. Let's just say he played awful against that Oklahoma defense. Running the ball really struggled. Throwing the ball even more struggled. I mean, it was just a rough night for him. And not to be mean, but whenever it got up to 24-3, I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that Oklahoma was going to win this game because I didn't have faith in that Alabama offense making the comeback against that OU defense. And so, yeah, this had all the makings of an upset game. You think about it, late November, ranked team going on the road to a team that has not to a 5-5 team, a team fighting for bowl eligibility. It had all the makings for an upset to happen. We just really, I guess we really didn't see it, which I mean, can you blame us with Oklahoma's offense? Well, the
Yeah.
Oklahoma defense was incredible, and that's what won them this game. So good for them. And then Bama, you like I said, you just got to win the Iron Bowl, and then maybe you're still alive in some conversations. But it's not like anything chaotic's ever happened there. So
Yeah, the Iron Bowl known for being, best team always wins, no question.
exactly.
There's never any kind of tomfoolery with last second touchdowns for either team. It's never
Fourth and
happened.
31, kick six.
I don't even know what you're
Um,
talking about. So
yeah, 99-yard drive by Bryce Young with a minute left. I mean, yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff.
sometimes this guy just makes stuff up. None of that stuff has ever happened in the Iron Bowl. So I don't know what he's talking about. But let's get to our own personal top 12s. Then we'll talk about what the top 12 looks like for the College Football Playoff Committee right now. But I thought since we had another exciting week with a lot of turnover, it'd be fun to talk about our own top 12s. And I'll go ahead and kick it off with mine. At number one, I went with the obvious. I think this is the team that everybody's going to have at number one. It's the team that's still number one in the country. It's Oregon. They've done everything possible to be the number one team in the nation. As long as they win, they're the number one team in the nation. They did their hard work at the beginning of the season, and now it's about reaping those rewards. That number two, I begrudgingly put Ohio State here. They've got two top five wins. So I'm going to put them here. They're a talented team. Uh, I'm not hating on Ohio State. I just hate having number one and number two be two Big Ten teams. I don't like it because only one of those teams will be here in 2 weeks or, in 3 weeks' time or whatever. So, but for now, that's not for me to decide. Ohio State's got the two top five wins. We'll put them at two. Texas at three. This is where I get a bit controversial. At number four, I have the Irish. Look, I think they've how many teams have four top 25 wins this season? At least four top 25 wins. It can't be that many. Um,
Not off my head.
and so the Irish have four top 25 wins. They were at number five. I'll talk a little bit about why I think they should be moved up before. I've got Miami at five. They get the job done against Wake Forest. Look, it didn't look great starting the game, but they closed it out, kept a pretty big margin, put them at five. At six, this is where I've got Penn State, and this is where I have Notre Dame and Miami moving up. Close game against Minnesota. Look, I know Minnesota's a talented team, but this is a game that Penn State needs to win and win big. Now, I know people aren't going to see eye to eye with me here, but I know that seven top 25 teams lost, and so some people's thoughts are, well, they won. And I get that. But so did Notre Dame and so did Miami, and they won in much more impressive fashion. So I think that should be valued to some degree, especially with both of these teams being one loss. Then at seven, I've got Georgia. At eight, I've got SMU. Uh, it's about time that we start moving these ACC teams up a little bit. Look, teams are starting to play bad. Teams are starting to lose in this top 25 and in this top 12. Time to start moving the ACC teams up. Time to move them up. At number nine, I've got Boise State. They're playing really, really well, good football. I didn't think at the beginning of the year I'd be putting one of these group of five teams this high up here. But I am. They're playing better than a lot of these teams. They deserve the credit in the world. Again, their only loss is a walk-off field goal against the number one team in the nation. Still the best loss in the entire country to have. So it's phenomenal where they're at. At 10, I put Indiana. This was your chance to prove yourselves, but you were at five. You lost to the number 2 team in the nation. You lost bad, which is why I've got you at 10, but I will not put you outside of the top 10 yet. At 11, I've got Clemson. I like Clemson here. They've really started to put something together here, making it exciting as they close out the season. Look, they need something to go their way in that Miami Syracuse game to get to the ACC championship, but they still have a chance to make a statement for themselves with the game they play this weekend. So a chance for Clemson here. They've done a lot of good work and still some work they can do. And at 12, I've got Arizona State putting together some impressive wins, a big win over BYU. I like them in. And if you'll notice, I left out a team that some people think should be here. I don't. That's Tennessee. Sorry, guys. I'm not impressed. There's a lot of other 2-loss teams that I think are playing a lot better than Tennessee right now, playing a lot bigger games than Tennessee right now. They lost me. Tennessee lost me after the Georgia game. So that's where I stand with my top 12.
I mean, I think I've made my points very clear about Tennessee since when did they? Since the Arkansas game, really? Since the Arkansas game. I think I've made my point very clear about them. So I didn't mind a little bit. I didn't mind based off of what I thought the committee would do, not what I think is right, but exactly what I thought the committee would end up doing, and it kind of did. So 1 through 4 stayed the exact same from the last one to me. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State. They all won. I didn't expect the committee to make any changes there. I got Notre Dame at 5. I felt like they deserved to move up. Miami, Georgia, even though I don't like them being that high, I think Tennessee would be. I thought Tennessee would be 8. So really, 1 through 8, I was pretty much on the money about them. I was kind of surprised. It's just kind of how I thought they would do with those. This is where it gets interesting with mine. Number 9, I had Indiana here. I thought Indiana would stay like 1 or 2 spots higher, courtesy of all the upsets dropping other teams back. But yeah, so they dropped to 9 in mine. Number 10, I had Boise State. Again, similar to that, I didn't know where they were going to end up ranking them. So, but I'm happy to see Boise State as a top 10 team. 11, I had SMU here, and it has nothing to do with me going against SMU. It's just what I thought the committee was going to do and be like, SMU, sure, we'll let you in. We'll let you in barely, though. Number 12, you're going to hate it. It's what I thought the committee would do. I thought they were going to put Bama at 12. I'm not going to lie. That's exactly what I thought they were going to do there. 13, I thought they were going to put Ole Miss. 14, South Carolina, then 15, Clemson. That was my top 15. That's how I saw it. Thankfully, though, we saw some differences in that ranking here because I thought for sure either Alabama or Ole Miss was going to be in that last spot to get in, and thankfully they were not.
Yeah, and now let's look at this top 12, and I'll just hit real quick beats. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Miami, Georgia, Tennessee. Like you just said, that was the top 8. Matched up with yours. Again, look, I'll go all day about Tennessee's shouldn't be here, but we're
Exactly.
wasting time, wasting daylight. At number 9, the committee goes with SMU. And again, look, I think now's the time. Whatever. The ACC's weak, whatever. You want to keep talking about that, that's fine. But we're getting 3-loss SEC schools. This was the time to start moving these ACC schools up into the college football playoff, at least for now. And then with the way the ACC championship unfolds, then you can decide who gets in and who doesn't, who's proved themselves. But I think right now, the 2-loss and the 1-loss ACC schools should be outnumbering these 3-loss SEC schools. And to the playoff committee's credit, not a single 3-loss SEC school would make the college football playoff right now.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's absolutely fair. I like that.
so yes, I like that. My big worry, and obviously nothing's set in stone until we get there. But my worry was Indiana would be a team that would fall completely out of the top 12, and Alabama or Ole Miss would be sitting at the 12. But that clearly didn't happen. At 10, they've got Indiana. And look, I think, we talked about it. You lost in your first big test. It was going to cost you some spots. But you played the number 2 team in the nation, so you're going to stay in the top 12. No more mistakes though for Indiana. This is
Yeah,
a team
no
that's
more. You can't. You play Purdue this weekend. You win that. You get rested up. You get healthy, and you hope things work out in your favor, where you're not having to sweat out on Selection Sunday.
yeah. Should be an easy finish here for them, but we'll see. At 11, they've got Boise State. Look, I know that it's Boise State and they're a group of five, but really, you can't tell me this is not a top 10 team in the country right now. I know why they're not, but you can't
Yeah.
tell. Um, and then at number 12, they've got Clemson right now with Bama at 13, 14 Ole Miss, South Carolina at 15, and 16 Arizona State. I still don't like the short end of the stick that the Big 12's getting. I know it's kind of whatever's going to happen there, and at least one team will get in. But I would like to see Arizona State. I'd be fine with South Carolina being like 13, but I'd like to see Arizona State over Alabama and Ole Miss.
Yeah, that's my whole thing in there. Again, I think Arizona State should be higher. If you want my opinion, I think SMU should be higher than Tennessee. If we're again going off of our thinking for this, I think SMU should be higher ranked than Tennessee. I think they played better teams. I feel like they have played better. And then when you talk about with Arizona State, they should be ahead of Alabama and Ole Miss. They just had back-to-back win against ranked opponents. So they rightfully deserve it in my mind that they should be a couple spots higher as well. But I don't know if you have the bracket in front of you, what the projected bracket would be. Because I have it here for you right
Yeah,
now.
here.
So obviously the top four seeds, number one, Oregon, number two, Texas, number three, Miami, number four, Boise State. Same from last week, no changes there. The 12 seed now would be Arizona State, taking on the five seed Ohio State in the first round. So an interesting matchup there to say the least. Then we'd have a couple of conference matchups in these other ones, Austin. Tennessee would be heading to Georgia again for a rematch from a game that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago with the 8-9 matchup. Then the 6-11 matchup, you got two Big Ten teams that haven't played this year. Penn State hosting Indiana in the 6-11 matchup is the way it's projected right now. And then 7-10, Notre Dame would be hosting SMU in the first round of the college
Uh,
football playoff. So some interesting matchups that got shooken up there. I will say one thing I want to keep my eye on here. UNLV and Boise State, it seems like they're going to meet again. If Boise State loses, keep an eye on Tulane. Tulane could be someone we might see sneak in there at the last second. If Boise State slips up either against Oregon State or against UNLV, I think Tulane's one you have to keep an eye on.
yeah, I'm with you there. I think UNLV might honestly be done now. Obviously, if they beat Boise State, who knows what happens. But I think they might be leaning putting in the American winner over UNLV if UNLV is the one to get the
Yep.
job. But let's get into our teams of the week. And I'll lead it off with my teams of the week. At number 5, I went with Auburn. Look, I thought this was an impressive win over Texas A&M, had the lead, survived the comeback bid to win it in overtime. Fun, exciting game in Jordan Hare. It's really what you expect from that venue and these kind of games. Auburn finding a way to get it done against the toughest and of opponents. Really, just the fun stuff you expect in Jordan Hare. At number 4, I went with Oklahoma. I liked Oklahoma's big win. I thought they were pretty dominant. But I had to give credit to some of these other wins that really showed to me some really dominant execution. Like at number 3, Kansas ran the ball down Colorado's throat and made this team suffer the consequences. They got caught looking ahead. I think. I just think Colorado didn't have their heads in the right place. They were expected to come out and win this game. Everybody was expecting to come out and win this game, and they got beat down. They weren't ready for a physical grudge match, and that's exactly what they got. At number 2, I went with Florida. Though it was a 7-point win, I was very impressed with the way this defense played down the stretch. again, limiting those offensive opportunities for Ole Miss and getting the job done with their defense. They didn't win this game on a walk-off touchdown. They won this game with about 700 interceptions in the last 2 minutes, only two of which counted. Um, and then at number one, I went with Arizona State. Look, not so much for the the prestige of the win, uh, because they were not the biggest named opponent to beat in BYU, even though still a ranked opponent. To me, it was seeing the opportunity that you have right now, your destiny in your own hands for the Big 12 championship, taking that destiny, controlling it, winning this game, and now setting yourself up one win away from going to your conference championship game. A team, like you said, projected to finish near the bottom in this Big 12. I had to give it to Arizona State here.
Yeah, so mine, same teams, just different order for some of them. So number 5, Auburn with me, similar to what you talked about. Whenever they were coming close to blowing that lead, you wonder, is this another classic Auburn moment from this season? They were able to survive, hang on, and win against a really good A&M team, so I had to put them in the rankings. Number 4, I had Kansas. And listen, them being this has nothing to do with the non-impressiveness of the win. They have just been killer after killer after killer. I mean, really, if anyone should be thanking them, it's Arizona State. Arizona State, because they've been winning and see Kansas take down some of these other teams, they have just rose up more and more and more in these rankings and given themselves a really good chance. Number 3, I had Florida. Like I said, really impressive. I'm happy for Billy Napier and them. This is a young Florida team this year. I'm excited to see what they are going to do next year with him there. I think they have potential to make some noise in the SEC. Keep an eye out for Florida next year. Number 2, I had to put Oklahoma there. A dominant win against Alabama. They should have dominated them from the get-go. Defense was just incredible for them. They shut down the Alabama offense, made Jalen Milroe look terrible, and were able to stay in control of this game, not let Bama get back in it. And then number 1, had to go with Arizona State. Had to go with them again. I've been ride or die with Arizona State the past couple of weeks, so I had to stick with them as my number 1. A great win for Coach Dillingham and them. And like you said, despite 9 teams being up for grabs, which again I'm sure we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, they got to do is beat Arizona, and they will play for a Big 12 championship in a conference where no one thought they had a shot.
Yeah, truly some impressive stuff there. But when we go to social media, the fans were pretty decided. Oklahoma winning on all the polls. So that leaves a no-brainer, no question, no doubts about it. Team of the week is the Oklahoma Sooners getting the job done against Alabama.
Man, that's kind of whenever I saw the polls, I'm like, Oklahoma's just kicking everyone's butt. I mean, if that doesn't tell you everyone's opinion on Bama, I don't know what does.
Yeah,
Listen, it doesn't matter with Alabama who the coach is. If they're highly ranked, people want to see Bama go down. It gets as simple as that, I think, for the people, which I don't blame them. Congrats to Oklahoma for the win on our team of the week. Very happy for them.
yeah, absolutely. Fun to see another new team getting up there and getting a win. Let's get into those player of the weeks, though. At number 5, I went with Cam Coleman, wide receiver from Auburn. 7 receptions, 128 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Very impressive performance. What puts him at number 5 here for me is that virtually all of this was done in the first half. He was really kind of silent in the second half. And even when Auburn threw passing touchdowns, it was getting other guys involved. And not to discredit his performance, look, obviously you have a big first half like that, defense is going to get involved, you're going to get schemed out, and it created other openings for other guys. So no slander here, but a big first half showing really is mostly where Cam Coleman's work came, especially with the touchdowns. So I'm going to give him the number 5 spot for me. At number 4, I went with Caleb Downs. Look, this is one of the best defensive backs in the country. But we're not just talking about his defense today. He had a massive punt return touchdown in this game that set Ohio State up, really killed Indiana right there at the end of the first half, and allowed Ohio State to take all the momentum and win this game and get themselves another big top 5 win. At number 3, I went with Bryce Thornton, DB from Florida. two huge late game interceptions against Jackson Dart to take this game and win it for the Gators. Absolutely jaw dropping performance by this defense. And really, when I saw him get that second interception, I was like, no way it's this guy again. But he found a way to make plays and shut down Jackson Dart. At number two, I went with Cam Scatabo from Arizona State. 147 yards, three touchdowns. Absolutely phenomenal performance. But at number one, I went with Devin Neal. 287 total yards, 200 rushing, 207 rushing, 80 receiving, three rushing touchdowns, one receiving touchdown. Absolutely jaw dropping game on senior night in Arrowhead against Colorado. Talk about a big statement game for Devin Neal. This was an unbelievable performance for me.
Absolutely was. So some similarities, again, some differences. So my number five, I've got Kip Lewis from Oklahoma. My big thing is he had the pick six in that game for Oklahoma that really opened that game up and was able to take it to the house. Had to show him some love defensively. Number four, I was with you. Cam Coleman for Auburn was a great in this first half in the game. After that, it's a bit of a question mark, but this guy came in was a five-star true freshman, and he's doing this stuff in his first year. I'm excited to see what he does in his second year at Auburn next year. Number three, you'll like this one, Luke Altmaier for Illinois. He had a great game, and then that phenomenal touchdown run to end their game against Rutgers. That was an incredible ending, by the way. I don't know how many of y'all got to catch the ending of that one, but I highly recommend going back and watching it because it was an incredible ending. Shout out to Rutgers for calling the timeout when Illinois was going to kick the field goal. Yeah. Number two, I had Devin Neal here, running back for Kansas, like you mentioned. An incredible game against Colorado. Ran all over him. I talked about for several weeks of weakness of this Colorado team was their run defense, and we saw it in this game with Kansas just running all over him. Devin Neal, absolutely incredible. But number one, I'm going to steal number one on the field, number one in my heart. It's Cam Scatterbo for Arizona State. This guy has become my favorite player in college football this year. So even with as great a performance as Devin Neal had, Cam Scatterbo was just as incredible in his game against Arizona State. And not only that, played security officer trying to clear fans off the field too when that whole scenario was going down. So talk about a multi-star athlete. Maybe he's got a future there. Who knows what he's got there. But Cam Scatterbo is my number one player, number one on the field, number one in my heart, Cam Scatterbo.
Well, look, if you're keeping score at home, Devin Neal, my number one, Cam Scatterbo, my number two. Cam Scatterbo, your number one, Devin Neal, your number two. That has them tied in the points right now. The fans flat out undecided. These guys split the polls. These guys are tied on the polls, making a rare Bold Take Podcast Player of the Week tie between Cam Scatterbo and Devin Neal, two running backs in the Big 12, fighting to prove something and make things interesting in the Big 12. So they're both going to be our Ashton Genty Player of the Week here for the Bold Take Podcast.
Yeah, I mean, you love to see it. They both were incredible. And again, we talked about this Big 12 being as much chaos as it is with how many teams are still left alive entering this final week. Yeah, they both deserve it. Obviously, I have a bit of favoritism, and I'm completely biased. You're absolutely right. With Cam Scatterbo, this is a guy I've loved since week one. So, yeah, had to show them some love. I'm happy for both of them to get some love here as our players of the week.
Absolutely. But now let's get into the game previews, and I've got more than I usually do because we've got some interesting games slated up here. Starting out, Oklahoma State versus Colorado. Look, Colorado needs to win this game. Look, they need things to happen. But for all these teams we're about to talk about in the Big 12, they got to win first. Before you worry about anything else happening, you got to win your game. Colorado faces Oklahoma State, team that has not won a conference game yet. Here's the thing, though. They have Ollie Gordon, one of the best running backs in the country. Hasn't had the season he expected, but they're facing a team that has a terrible run defense, just got gashed by Devin Neal. Chance to play spoiler, to make an upset, and allow Ollie Gordon to flash his talent. What do you think about this game?
I think that Colorado should be very worried because I think they're going to be able to run the football against Colorado very well as long as they give Ollie Gordon the football in good numbers. They got to make sure they get him the football. I think if they do, they can have success running the ball um, against Colorado. But listen, as far as Oklahoma State, no, I don't know how Arkansas still lost to this team. Yes, I'm still bitter about it. Thank you for asking. Um, but as far as this Oklahoma State team, their defense has really not been that good. I would just say that their defense has not been impressive. So I'll be honest with you, I'm expecting a lot of points in this game. I'm expecting a lot of points for both sides. Um, I think it's going to be a fun matchup. It's an 11 a.m. on Black Friday. I think it will be a fun matchup for both sides. I will just say this: it's going to be a lot of points. That's my thinking, Austin.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Then we've got Kansas versus Baylor. A little bit of a twofold game here. Baylor looking to stay alive for a chance of the Big 12 championship, which not a lot of people saw coming into this year. Like we talked about last week, I feel like Dave Aranda's been on the hot seat all year, and yet this Baylor team is in. They're bowl eligible. They have a chance to make the Big 12 championship. So interesting situation there. And for Kansas, look, a win in this game and you're bowl eligible, which didn't look that way. What 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago? So big time game here. What do you see happening in this one?
Some of that, I mean, I think it comes down to me about the success of the run games. I will say someone to keep an eye on Bryson Washington for Baylor. The last couple of weeks, him as running back, he's been incredible for Baylor. So I think that's something Kansas got to look to shut down. Um, that's just the main thing. I think you stop the run if you're both teams. I think you've got a good chance of getting something happening there. So that's my biggest takeaway is what I would say is both teams need to focus on stopping the run and quarterback play. Look, Sawyer Robertson and Jalen Daniels, they both struggle with turnovers at points. Whichever team quarterback plays the cleanest game and whichever team has more success running the football will be the one that wins this game.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Then we've got Texas Tech versus West Virginia, a game where one of these teams will keep their hopes of a Big 12 championship alive, at least for the relative time being, because somehow both of these teams are still eligible for this Big 12 championship. Um, and so they'll have a hand in not only setting themselves up to get in, but knocking out one of their competitors for a spot here. Um, but it's going to be a battle. Look, Texas Tech's had an interesting season. West Virginia's had an interesting season, and they both have a chance to get into this Big 12 championship. I was stunned when I saw that these two teams were still alive.
Yeah, the story of the Big 12. You're starting to see some teams still has a chance to make it. And yeah,
Yeah,
here we are. Um, nonetheless, though, I think this will be a fun game. Similar to the other one, I expect a lot of points here. Um, West Virginia is like a weird one again. Talking about them 6-5, but there's still a path for them to make this Big 12 championship. Uh, Listen, for both sides, again, the run game's been strong, I think, for both sides. I think you focus on that. You've got a pretty good chance there. Taj Brooks, I would probably lean with Texas Tech because Taj Brooks is one of the more underrated running backs in the country. Um, so I would probably lean, but I think, again, both teams running the ball. I know what to expect for that. And again, the quarterbacks avoiding turnovers. They do that. One of these teams is still going to have a chance here to somehow, as long as there's like a million other things that happen, to make the Big 12 title game.
yeah. So let's talk about some of these tiebreaker scenarios that you were so kind to find and send to me here, um, and talk about kind of what can happen here. Because those are really our big marquee games. Obviously, Arizona State plays Arizona and BYU plays Houston, but not so much. Those are games we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. But we look at this, and entering Week 14, 9 teams are still in contention for the Dr. Pepper Big 12 Football Championship. The following details tie-breaking scenarios for ties among teams with 7-2 Big 12 records. Two-team tie scenarios. The two teams tied at 7-2 will be the championship game participants. Cut,
Obviously.
dry, plain, simple. Three-team tie scenarios. Colorado lost. Arizona State versus Iowa State. Arizona State lost. Iowa State versus BYU. Iowa State lost. Arizona State BYU. BYU lost if Texas Tech defeats West Virginia. Then, if Baylor beats Kansas and Cincinnati beats TCU, Colorado versus Iowa State. Jeez Louise. Any other thing happens, Colorado versus Arizona State.
Oh
If
boy.
if West Virginia defeats Texas Tech, Arizona State versus Iowa State. 4-team tie scenarios. Arizona State versus Iowa State. That's what happens in a 4-team tie. For teams
Um,
who are 5-3 entering the week, they must win and see at least 3 of the 4 teams who are sitting at 6-2 lose. That's unbelievable. So you need 3 of Arizona State, Iowa State, BYU, and Colorado to lose this week. Fortunately for you, none of those teams play each other this week, so it's possible. Likely or probable? No, but it is possible. So a lot of chaos can unfold in this Big 12 and this final week with games on top of that spaced out all over this Thanksgiving period on Friday and Saturday. So it's going to be a lot of chaos.
yeah, I can't wait to see it. As you all know and remember from last year, I am an agent of chaos. I root for chaos to happen. As much as I would love for Arizona State to make it, it could get interesting. I mean, Arizona, they have a really good, we know what Arizona has offensively. They could give them a scare. Iowa State's got to play Kansas State. That's not a guaranteed win for Iowa State there. You talked about with Baylor taking on Kansas. You wonder what happens there. I mean, listen, I know that you look at some of the teams that are 5-3, you're right, there's no way they have a shot with all this. But I'm telling you, these 5-3 teams have legit shots, I think, with some of these teams because of the strength of those teams. And I think it's safe to say anything can happen in this Big 12. Anything that can happen will happen. I mean, don't forget about with BYU, taking on Houston. Houston beat Kansas State earlier this year. They beat a ranked team already this year. So why wouldn't they take down a team that's lost 2 in a row already and it's kind of slumping entering the final game of the regular season? So I'm excited to see it happen. And that Houston BYU game doesn't kick off till 9:15 at night. So BYU could just be sitting there all day, see things happen where if they win, they can get into the Big 12 championship. And I honestly think that's probably what will happen. I'm expecting to be Arizona State and BYU is my prediction because I don't know if Iowa State's going to be able to beat that Kansas State team. These are 2 very similar teams with running the football. And the difference to me is quarterback. I do like some Avery Johnson, as you all know. So this Big 12 is going to be pure chaos. I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Give me West Virginia, Iowa State. That's my final Big 12 conference championship prediction. You can quote me
Give
on
me
that.
West Virginia and Baylor. What?
West Virginia. Now that would be something. Um, so I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to say West Virginia, Iowa State. Have a little bit of fun. Live a little bit, people. Well, let's get to some of these other game previews now. I've got Michigan, Ohio State here, and you might be thinking to yourself, why Michigan, Ohio State? Why have we been talking about this? Michigan has dominated this series as of late, and that's really my only reason here. Either Ohio State's going to come out and dominate and take out, a couple years worth of rage on Michigan, or Michigan comes out and plays a really good game and has a chance to play spoiler to Ohio State making the conference championship. Ohio State loses, Penn State and Indiana win, then Ohio State's out of the conference championship, right?
I believe so. I believe so, if I'm correct. I was so focused on the 9-team Big 12 tiebreaker, I
Yeah.
haven't done much research into the Big 10 tiebreaker rules.
I think it's unlikely that Michigan wins this game, but they have the history right now of winning this game. They have the momentum in this series. And now you get a chance to play spoiler to your biggest rival as far as the conference championship berth is concerned. And could really hamper them in the college football playoff rankings as well. You think about it. Penn State, Indiana lose. There will be a tiebreaker there. One of those teams, or Penn State, Indiana win. tiebreaker there. One of those teams goes to the conference championship. The other one stays in with one loss. They should be ranked higher than Ohio State at least. And so now you create an interesting situation for Ohio State. A lot on the line there. Miami, Syracuse, another ball game to look at here. With kind of the same situation. Clemson sitting outside looking in now. They need Syracuse to win. Miami should win this game, but Syracuse playing spoiler. So a couple games here where teams could be playing spoiler in conference. What do you think about these games?
It's never happened before to see a spoiler do any of this ever.
Yeah,
It's never happened before. No, I mean, absolutely. It's very much, I mean, I talked about this Miami Syracuse game last week. I talked about the way it sets up Syracuse, an 8-3 team. They got Miami coming to town. Miami has everything to lose here with a loss. And Clemson, even if they lose, it doesn't matter because it's a non-conference game. So Clemson could lose, drop in the rankings, but if Miami loses, Clemson would go to the ACC championship game. Miami would be out. So yeah, it's pure chaos there. Michigan, Ohio State. Look, if I'm Ohio State and I don't get ahead early, I would get very nervous. I think if you're an Ohio State fan, if you do not get up by double digits in this first quarter, you should be worried because as we've seen in these rivalry weeks, if it's a close game early on, it'll usually stay a close game throughout. It doesn't matter what the records are. That's usually how it plays out there. So I think Michigan has a chance if they can keep it close early on. And then Syracuse defense has to get a couple of stops, which is something no one's really done against Miami this year. So they got to get some stops. We know their offense can do. They've got to get some stops against this Miami offense. I think they both have potential to have stuff happen this weekend. I think that these could be two upset spots. Absolutely.
yeah. It'll be an interesting situation. Let's get into these game picks now. Let's start off with South Carolina versus Clemson. Who you got in this game?
Man, again, I just love that this has playoff implications in it. Again, I just love that. Um, Listen, I'm not afraid to pick South Carolina. They went into Clemson 2 years ago and handled business against the Clemson team that was playing potentially for a playoff spot, and they went in and ruined all that. So my thinking there is, why wouldn't they do it now? And it's very clear to me, Clemson struggles against good teams. They can't beat a good team. The few good teams they played, Georgia humiliated them. Louisville really dominated them throughout the game. The only teams with a winning record that they beat was Pittsburgh, and that was with a backup quarterback. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
have no problem. Give me South Carolina in this game. I think they win, and it sets up a fun scenario with South Carolina sitting back and waiting and see what happens next week with conference championships.
absolutely. I like South Carolina here too. I'm completely with you. Look, it's just the physicality and diversity of this run game. You've got Rocket Sanders who comes in and he's just a hard guy to tackle. And then there's always the threat that Lenore Sellers is going to pull the ball and take off running. Not to mention the guy's got a rocket arm and can throw for over 300 yards in a ball game as well. I think it's a lot of diversity, a lot of difficult stuff to guard. I like South Carolina here to make it themselves the case for one of those last college football playoff spots. Then we've got Kansas State versus Iowa State. Who you got here? Cyclones, Wildcats.
Yep, Farmageddon, as they call it. What a phenomenal nickname that is for
Yeah.
that sport. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Listen, this last year, if you remember this one, this was a beautiful snow game. People that do remember, it was a gorgeous snow game between the two. I don't expect that to happen this time. But to me, the difference in this game, you wonder, both teams have pretty solid defenses. Both teams can run the ball well. It's going to come down to which quarterback do I trust more or which quarterback has more ability. And I think the scrambling ability of Avery Johnson is something that's key for Kansas State in this game. I think he can make some plays. No disrespect to Rocco Beck for Iowa State. He's good. But when that run game struggles in the passing game, both quarterbacks are really not the greatest. It's a flip of the coin for me. It's a tough matchup to pick. I'm going to lean with Kansas State, though, in the scrambling ability of Avery Johnson, but it's a tough matchup for me to pick.
Yeah, it's a tough game to pick for sure, but I'm going to go with Iowa State. Look, both teams have the pressure of trying to get to this conference championship. But I think Iowa State's going to find a way to get the job done, tap into it. Look, I think this is one of the more talented teams in the Big 12, maybe the most talented team in the Big 12, but they've had rough spots as of late. I think they have a chance to prove themselves, get themselves right, and win a big game against Kansas State, put themselves back in the conference championship. And our final game pick here, you knew it was going to be here because the SEC championship berth is on the line. Texas, Texas A&M. Who do you got in this ball game?
Oh man, I am just happy that this game is back. The Lone Star Showdown. Everyone's been wanting it back since 2011, I think was the last time it was played, if I'm correct. I don't want to, say stuff that I don't mean on that, but I'm excited for it. I'm excited. The fans, the hype around this game's been going on all season long. I mean, there's a part of me that you wonder with Texas. They really have not played a lot of elite teams. The one elite team they played in Georgia really didn't have much competition against them. So you wonder going into a hostile environment like that for A&M, you wonder what's at stake there. But I think that you're going to see the best game Texas plays this year. I think Texas goes in, they win this game, and they're going to play against Georgia for that SEC championship. I want to trust A&M, but their offense at points can be inconsistent. And then there's nothing against Marcel Reed's running ability. It's when it comes to passing the ball. I expect Texas to stack the box and make them try to beat them throwing the ball. And I don't know how much success they'll have doing that. So I'm going to take Texas to win this one in a close one in the first of hopefully many more in this Lone Star Showdown.
Yeah, had you asked me before the Auburn game who I thought was going to win this game, I probably would have said Texas A&M. But look, the momentum is now in Texas's favor. A&M just came off a tough quadruple overtime loss. I just don't like the way things are set up for Texas A&M here. I really want to pick them in this game, but I can't do it. Like you said, I think Texas is going to bring their best game. I think A&M will too. But look, the 12th man in College Station just doesn't do it for me if the team's not going to come out and execute. Again, we saw what happened in week one against Notre Dame. The fans were rowdy and ruckus the whole game, and it just didn't matter because A&M just could never get it going against Notre Dame. I think we're going to see a similar result in this one, but I think Texas will put up a little bit more points. So I like the Longhorns in this one. But let's take it to our bet of the week, our final segment here. How you winning us money this week? How you getting us money this week?
Well, let me just say Minnesota plus 11 and a half and Arizona State -3. You're welcome. I told you that's how they was going to go, and that's exactly what happened there. Minnesota was so close to winning outright. Still kind of broke my heart on that one, but there's a couple I'm looking at. It's rivalry week, so I'm thinking there could be a lot of fun things and unique things that could happen. So I have not one, not two, but three plays for you this week. I got three for you.
I like
So
it.
my first one that I'm going to give you, take South Carolina money line against Clemson. I've rolled with South Carolina money line before, and it's worked in my favor against A&M. You take South Carolina money line, they're going to go into Clemson and win outright. Number two, we're going to have another SEC matchup. Give me Vanderbilt plus 11 against Tennessee. They're hosting Tennessee at home. This has all the makings of yet another Vanderbilt upset. I think that's one you got to keep an eye on with the Commodores. And then my third and final one, because this game's on Thanksgiving, I have to do it. Give me Memphis Tulane over 55.5 on Thanksgiving night when these two face off. I expect a lot of points in that one, and I think that will be a lot of fun. I had to do one for the only Thanksgiving college football game. I had to.
That's fair. Um, let's put it like this. I've also got three for you. Serving it up right, I'm going to start out with West Virginia money line against Texas Tech. I like this team on the road to go out and win this game. Then we've got Auburn plus 11.5 in the Iron Bowl. I like Auburn to keep it close. They just had a big win last week. Alabama just had a big loss. I think that is a concoction for another close and exciting Iron Bowl. And then finally, I like Michigan plus 20.5 against Ohio State. I think you're stupid to think this is going to be a big game, a big spread of a game. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't know that Michigan's going to win it, but they've won this game as of late. They've dominated this game as of late. This game is like their national championship this year since they won't be going to the college football playoff. I think they come in, they play their best ball, they give Ohio State a fight. They might not win, but they'll cover plus 20.5. Those are my bets of the week. Ooh, we got a fun rivalry week, final week of college football action before we head into conference championships. A lot
Hey,
on the
and you know
line.
we're going to pick all of them. You know we're going to pick every single conference championship, folks. So next week's going to be a fun one.
Absolutely. And it's going to be decisive. Look, this is a pretty decisive week for the college football playoff because unlike this week, next week we don't see everybody play. So
Mm-mm.
if you're not playing in a conference championship, this is the last time to make a message for one of those last spots. But that's Austin Wader. I'm Austin Hill. We want to thank you for listening.